righty. Hello everyone, it's Marc Sabatella from Mastering MuseScore here, and welcome to the Music Masterclass. Hopefully everything's okay. Again, I'm without internet. This construction going on outside my building is just been knocking us for a loop. So anyhow, we'll be looking at some more Canon-related submissions and the things that come up relative to the melodies that we've been creating over this chord progression, and see what comes up. I still feel like that the comments that I've made about leaps versus steps and how I attempted to clarify a little bit in the newsletter, I still feel there's more to talk about there. And so I'm sure those things are going to come up. But I'm also going to make another, like a general observation that everything that I'm talking about, they're details you obsess over when it's time to obsess over details. But that's not always, it's not always time for that, right? There's often times when you go with, you go with your gut and what sounds good. And typically these guidelines that I'm talking about, they will help things sound good. But if things sound good and they appear to not be following the guideline, probably there's a reason for that that's worth exploring. And so, we'll try to do that some as well. But again, they're just guidelines, and they're not, laws of nature. They're laws of nature in the sense that leaps sound like leaps. But sometimes that's the sound you want, right? So that's the overall comment I want to make. So I'm not going to do nothing but talk about that. But it is probably one of the biggest areas for possible discussion. So what I want to do is hop over to where I have all these scores loaded. Actually, I'm going to come to a different window here. We're going to take a look, because some people's you don't have enabled for downloads. I wasn't able to download them yet, and I did just put comments on those that didn't. But I'm going to go ahead and kind of hit some of these in kind of a random order, if that's okay. I'm going to first look at Lois's here, which I think is really interesting. So first, let's look at her comment about it. She says she's been trying to catch up, and that's not the one I was thinking of that had another comment, but it is one I want to look at. So we're going to look at Lois's submission here, and looking at the quarter notes version, one thing that we can see is it's not mostly stepwise, right? And that was one of the things that we talked about was, going with mostly stepwise melodies. But that's not to say that's the only kind of good melody, right? So we're going to try to do this. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to call out the pitches, and because I don't have my piano here because I'm in a conference room in the building, so I can use my phone for the internet service. I'm going to let MuseScore play this, but first we're going to try to sing that quarter note melody, all right? The stepwise ones, I won't say weren't worth singing, but I know we could sing quarter notes that are moving in steps, but this one's a little leapier. So I'm going to call out the pitches, all right? We have, these are all quarter notes, A4, A4, F sharp 4, A4. This is all octave 4. A, F sharp, A, and then D, A, B, A. And calling that out for benefit Elizabeth or anyone else who's not seeing my screen right now. So A, F sharp, A, then down to D, back up to A, B, A. So I'm going to get a pitch reference using MuseScore. I'm going to use MuseScore to give me a D. I'm just going to click a D to hear what D sounds like. I'll turn my volume back up a little louder so I can hear what a D sounds like. All right, so there's my D. So now we're going to try to sing that melody. A, F sharp, A, D, A, B, A. I'm going to try to sing it before we hear MuseScore play it, and I want you to try it also, and I'm going to kind of call through how I'm doing it. So D was my D, D, F sharp, A is my A. I just arpeggiated the tonic triad to find that A. And if you look at this melody, A, F sharp, A, D, A, B, A, almost every single note there was in that tonic triad. That's kind of a cool little coincidence there. There was just that B towards the end, and that's just a step up. So I think that's how we're going to sing it. So D, F sharp, A. I'm going to count to 4, and I want you to sing with me. 1, 2, 3, 4. A, F sharp, A, D, A, B, A. That's a lovely melody. I like that. It's a nice little melody. Now, I was just looking at that just as a melody and thinking about that. Da 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 boo da da da. That's a lovely melody. That works as eighth notes. Yeah, that's a cool melody. I think the fact that those leaps outline the triad make it so powerful. And it's interesting that all those notes outline the tonic triad, even though the chord is changing like crazy out from under that, right? The first 2 repeated A's are over 2 different chords, a D chord and then an A chord. Then we go down to an F sharp and we're on a B minor chord. We come back to an A and now we're on another chord. We're on the F sharp minor chord. And then we go down to D, but it's not a D chord, it's a G chord, right? And then we come back up to A and we're finally back up to that D chord. So we're getting a really interesting mix of how these melody notes fit the chords while having a melody that's got a childlike simplicity to it. I mean, I love this. So I'm gonna listen to it now with MuseScore playing it. Oh, here's another little trick that I would love people to do if you want. I have to say this is gonna be easier for men to do than women, or women who can get low contralto notes. What I want people to try to do on some of these exercises is sing both the melody and the bass line. Now, not literally at the same time, of course, but back and forth. Bum, 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 nope. D, F sharp, I'm like trying to sing the melody notes while singing the bass line, and I'm driving myself crazy. A in the melody, D in the bass, A in the melody, A in the bass, F sharp in the melody, B in the bass, A in the melody, D, F sharp in the bass. I had to kind of find that F sharp, right? Because of that going back and forth. D in the melody, G in the bass, A in the melody, D in the bass, B in the melody, G in the bass, A in the melody, A in the bass, right? That's a nice little trick to be able to do that. I will say I do that occasionally. I practice doing that kind of thing, but in doing it, I've never tried to do it in a case like this, a chorale style melody where the chord changes with every melody note. That makes it really hard for me to orient myself. I tend to do this on like jazz pieces where I've got a whole measure full of eighth notes on one chord. And I sing one bass note and sing that melody, and then another bass note and sing that melody, right? That's a little easier for me than this constant going back and forth. But it was kind of an interesting little trick. And if I could sing that bass line a little better, D, A, B, F sharp. I just want to feel that F sharp is in my voice. G, D. I can't really sing that D down there very well. G, A. If I can get that into my head, then I can do it by ear better. So I want everyone to try to practice that right now. We're going to do it. So we're going to sing the melody note, then the bass note, melody note, bass note, melody note, bass note. And I don't expect you to be good at it, but you're going to sing it with me, all right? So here we're going to go. Have I drifted in pitch, or am I still close to the A? Let's find out. Here's an A. I'm close enough. A, D. Okay, so we're going to sing that melody note. Ready? Here we go. Melody note, A, and then the bass note, D, and then the melody note, A, and then the bass note, A, and then the melody note, F sharp. Did I sing that right? A, F sharp, right? A, now the bass note, B, and now back to the melody note, A, and now that bass note, F sharp, and now our melody note, D. That's our tonic, remember? That's how we can find that. D, and now our bass note, G, and now our melody note, A, back to the same pitch we've sung over and over again. And now down to our bass note. D. And now our melody note. B. And then our bass note. G. And then our melody note. A. And now our bass note. A. These are just quarter notes, right? And they're just pitches. But now this is so much more musically useful than random flashcard pitch exercises where you're just like getting random little snippets of melody. We're taking an actual nice melody and really hearing how it fits the chords a little bit. Part of how I'm finding that bass note in my voice is hearing how it sounds against that melody note I just sang. Or if I sing them the other way around, I would do the same thing. So anyhow, it's absolutely something worth practicing. We could totally do that on the next eighth note melody too. But let's finally actually hear it together, shall we? All right, nice. So the thing is, I love the melody on its own. I saw this coming before, but I wasn't sure how I was going to think about it until I heard it. When I hear the melody against the bass line, every single melody note works against that bass line, right? It works. It's always the root or the third or the fifth of the chord. They're all perfectly good chord tones. However, there's not a lot of thirds in there, right? These melody notes are almost all roots and fifths of the chords, right? The A against the D, the A against the A, the F sharp against the B. Those are all either the root of the chord or the fifth of the chord. Finally, we get that A against the F sharp, which is a third of a chord. And then we get the D against G, another fifth, A against D, another fifth, B against G is a third, A against A, the octave. So we only get 2/3 in there, a third above the bass note or the third of the chord. As a result, it feels hollow. Now, there's nothing wrong with that as long as there's another voice filling in the missing chord tones. We really want to get those thirds in there of the chord as much as we can. So this melody is fine. The melody doesn't have to provide the thirds, but I would tend to not want to start off a canon with this melody because then we're going to have to hear it against the bass with no one else filling in the middle notes. And so that was something I sort of saw when I was just thinking through it before we listened to it, but I wasn't sure until I heard it, how I'd feel about it. And then when I heard it, it confirmed what I thought I was going to hear, which is it's a little hollow sounding on its own. Let's listen to it again with that in mind. That's the pretty one. Can you hear how the thirds sound pretty? I'm going to point out the pretty ones again. There's our third. There's our third. I'm not saying the other notes don't sound good, but those thirds really provide something. So, yeah, that's just something to consider for sure as we think about this stuff here. So the other thing, and Elizabeth mentions about contrary motion. Yeah, there's some nice situations where the bass line is going up and the melody goes down or vice versa. There's another contrary motion thing worth pointing out here. You notice when I was talking about the intervals, I said fifth twice in a row. And the question is that parallel fifths, right? We have from G to D is a fifth, and then from D to A is a fifth at the beginning of the second measure. Well, those are both fifths, but in this case, there's contrary motion. One of them, the soprano is going up, the bass is going down. So they're 2 fifths in a row, but in contrary motion. Here again, you can read 5 different textbooks and get 5 different answers regarding to what extent is that okay? To what extent is having either fifths or octaves that are consecutive like that, but in contrary motion, okay? And the gist of it is usually, yeah, it could be, depends on what else is going on with the other voices and harmonically and etc. So I'm not even going to worry about that. We've already established that some amount of parallel fifths can be okay. All right. Since we're doing the sight singing thing, I'm going to sing this next melody. So I'm going to call out the pitches. And so I'm going to say about these pitches, oh, so this is a thing. And Elizabeth, you can maybe help me out if you can remember much about Braille. This melody that we're about to do is all going to be steps and thirds. And my memory of how Braille music works is that as long as you have steps and thirds, you don't have to put octave signs in the Braille. You can just put the pitches and they can go as high or as low as you want. You can step up. You can have a 3-octave scale and not have to change octaves as long as it's all steps or thirds. And so if I just call out the pitches, and then you just think, what's the close? If I say F sharp and then D, in Braille, that would always mean the D below that F sharp, because that's the closest D. The D above the F sharp would require an octave sign. And in MuseScore, it's the same way, right? When you're entering notes in the MuseScore, if you enter an F sharp and then you type D, it's going to pick the closest D, the F sharp, the D below that F sharp. So if I call out the pitches here, and we just think about what's the closest version of that, it should give us the right octaves. So I'm going to call out the pitches. In the first measure, we have F sharp, D, E, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, A. And let's just do that. That's 8 pitches. F sharp, D, E, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, A. So that's mostly steps with some thirds, or steps and thirds. So D is my tonic, D, F sharp is my F sharp. So I'm going to try to sing this melody, and you all try to sing it with me. I'm not going to overthink it, because I think I can handle this. It's just steps and thirds. I think I can pull it off. D, F sharp, and I'm going to do it like ding, boom, that tempo. 1, because remember, it's a real slow tempo. 4. Bum, 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 bum. Right? Is that right? I think I got that right. Let's hear it now. Well, let's all sing it again. Let's try it again. D, F sharp. Bum, bum, E, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, A. Let's do that again. And this time we're going to use solfege syllables. That's mi, do, re, ti, right? Let's try it with solfege syllables. Mi, do, re, ti, do, re, mi, sol. I think I'm getting this. Now I'm going to do it with pitches, but instead of saying C sharp, I'm going to do the thing that I've mentioned a couple times before. And I know, Elizabeth, you know this system where we basically use German naming of the pitches. So C sharp, I'm going to pronounce cease. F sharp, I'm going to pronounce fees. And that allows us to say sharps with one syllable. D, fees. So now I'm going to do the same thing that way. Sing along with me. Fees for F sharp, cease for C sharp. Fees, D, E, cease, D, E, fees, A. All right, good. Let's go on. B, G, A, F sharp, D, E, C sharp, E. I'll say that again. B, G, D. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. I'm reading the chord symbol. B, G, A, F sharp, then D, E, C sharp, E. Can I remember the pitch you just landed on? Do-do-do-dum is the A, so bum is the B. And we have this little pattern of kind of thirds. G, the B jumping down to the E, stepping up to the A, skipping down to the F sharp, right? So let's try that. B, G, A, F sharp, D, E, C sharp, E. And I'm going to use German naming this time. B is going to be my B. 3, 4. B, G, A, fees, D, E, and I tried to remember the pitch of that E because I kind of wanted to sing a D after that C sharp. I had to remember, hey, I just sang that E. I can do it. Let's do it again. B, more. B, G, A, F sharp, D, E, C, E. All right. Hopefully some of you are singing along because it's instructive. But now let's hear it. These are all good chord tones, and she's got this passing tone here, the E between the D and the F sharp in the first measure. And the only other non-chord tone is this E towards the end of the second measure, right? In the second measure, we have D, E over the G chord. So that E is a non-chord tone. And that E is not resolving by step. And so it's not doing the thing that non-chord tones would normally want to do. But you may recall, as when I gave my harmonic analysis of this piece, that G chord there at the end of the second measure, near the end of the second measure, is sometimes played as an E minor chord, right? Some of the melodies treat that as an E minor chord. So if we think of it that way, that E is actually the root of the chord. And so it's going to be fine. And it's consonant above that bass note G, so it's not a dissonance there either. There's a number of reasons. And we can also say, hey, that E is kind of held into the next chord. It's like anticipating the next chord because we also get an E over the A chord, right? So I have every reason to expect this is all going to sound good together. But now I'm going to play it, and here, MuseScore, play it. Can't argue with it. Now, I say I can't argue with it, but I haven't done a like full-on analysis of are there parallel fifths, etc. on there. But first glance, it sounds really nice. I'm looking for things like I see a fifth in the second bar, but the second chord, but no other fifths nearby. There's an octave on the fourth beat, no other octaves nearby, right? That's how I'm kind of doing my quick check for this. There's a fifth on the second beat of the second bar. There's a fifth on the third beat of the second bar. So that's one of the ways I check for things, looking for what's happening on the beat. So there's a fifth, second beat of the second bar between the D and the bass and the A and the melody, and then on the third beat between the G and the bass and the D and the melody. Here again, it's contrary motion. They're in opposite directions. So I have reason to think it's not going to bother me much. But I'm going to play that passage again, and we're going to pay attention to that, beats 2 and 3 of the second bar. Oh, I stopped it too soon. Silly me. Because that part sounded lovely. All right. Once I've prepared my ear to maybe not like that fifth on beat 3 because it's following the fifth on beat 2, when I listen to it, I'm like, yeah, actually, I do kind of hear it. I do kind of hear it as not a huge problem. And again, with another voice filling in the gaps, wouldn't bother me at all. The fact that there's no third of that chord, there's no B being sounded, makes that fifth be that much more prominent. But here is my fix for you. What if we simply reversed the D and the E? What if we did that? If we reversed the D and the E on beat 3, suddenly it would be stepwise. Suddenly that E would get to resolve by step to the D and then by step to the C sharp. And it would do a great job of it would push that perfect fifth half a beat later. So I would love to do that, but this is one of the ones that I can't download, I think. Yeah, I can't download it, which, not the end of the world. I'm actually going to just type this thing in because I can, and I want you to hear this because it's important stuff, right? So I'm going to go ahead and open my community contribution version of this thing. So where's my submission? Right here. So this was my template. So I'm going to like do my own version of it. I'm just going to enter that melody into MuseScore and fix it to the way I'm describing here and see what I think. So when I enter those notes, can I remember those notes? Here's a good thing. Ba, it was F sharp, D, E, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, A, B, G, A, F sharp, and now I want to change it to E. I sang it wrong, right? I sang a G. I went B, G. I sang B, G, A, F sharp, G, because in my mind I was hearing that pattern of thirds. That's silly me. I really wanted to set B, G, A, F sharp, E, D, C sharp, E. Now, in point of fact, it would probably sound lovely if it had gone back up to the G. Might even sound better, but let's go with my first version here, and let's hear this now. So I just switched the E and the D on beat 3 of that second bar. Now we're going to hear it. Oops, I need to play both staves. Yeah, so I definitely like that a little better. That open fifth right on the beat, on beat 3, was just a little too much. I'm trying to be sensitive to these fifths. And so that's I think what I would suggest there. So I'm spending time on this one because, again, we're going to expect to see a lot of the same issues coming up. And I thought just the appearance of that quarter note melody fascinated me. I looked at that one right off the bat and said, wow, that's really interesting. It's kind of arpeggiating the triad, and it looks like it fits the chord well. Let's have fun playing with that one, right? But I'm just going to now quickly go through the other melodies in this one and then spot check some other things. And by all means, if people have submitted things that you have a particular measure of one of your particular ones that you would like me to take a look at, tell me in the chat. I'm kind of focusing here on submissions from people that I haven't seen many submissions from before, so that we get to spread the wealth around. But let's hear the 16th note melody here. I'm not going to try to sing it. We're just gonna hear the 16th note melody. Love that doo-da-doo-da-dum that I'm hearing at the end. That's a melody. That's a song, right? What is that song? Isn't it romantic? That's what it is. Anyhow, so yeah, there's some nice things in this melody. That little lick there is kind of nice, and then it's echoed 2 beats later with I love that. That is nice sort of development of a motif there. Blah, blah, blah. Blah doesn't mean boring. It just means something else. It doesn't even matter what happens after that. It could have been anything happening on beats 2 and 4, and I would have loved that. Once we had the doo-da-da-doo-dum, doo-da-da-da-dum. In fact, this would work really well just with eighth notes. Boo-da-da-da-da-da-doo-da-da-doo-dum, ba-dum. Oh, that would have been really nice too. Doo-da-da-da-dum. Then E to step into the D, E, F sharp, and then C sharp, stepping into the B, and then she could have done the same thing here. Do da 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 dum. She totally could have put a C sharp on the end of that beat 1, right? Do da 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 dum. That totally could have worked well too. But then you have to ask the question, is it too much of a good thing, right? When you develop a motif, at what point are you boring people by repeating it too much? And at what point are you wanting to vary it? And 3 is typically the magic number. You don't want to go with more than 3 variations. So you're either going to do 3 statements of it and then a variation, or 2 statements and then a variation, so you don't even hit that. So the third one itself is a variation. So yeah, that's a good question, Colleen, about the 16th notes. I mean, I think people are doing well with all of them, but here's what I think happens with the 16th notes. It obscures any other issues with like fifths and octaves and things, because now the other notes in between create the interest. And then we can target things like you have a note that you know you want at the beginning of a measure, and I mean on one beat, and a note you want on the next beat, and now you've got 4 notes to get from A to B. And you can kind of construct that line however you want. Whereas when you're dealing with quarter notes, you're just stuck. You better hope you picked good chord tones to begin with. But now we can pick almost whatever chord tone we want on the beat and then fill in the gaps how we like. And to some extent, that's how we think about improvising over chord changes. You think about the note you want to target on the next chord, and then you construct a line to get you there. I don't know. That's the way I think of it. Let's hear the final melody here with the varied rhythms. So one thing I love in this melody is the way she has found common tones, right? This A held between the first 2 chords, the D chord and the A chord. It works across both of them. And so she holds on to that A, and then comes to the F sharp over the B minor chord, which also works over the F sharp minor chord, and holds on to it. And then the D also, in the next measure, it's common to both the G chord and the D chord. So she's able to hold on to that. So that's really nice. We want to listen to that again. So I really like how that works. The thing that would be worth paying attention to is it was great to be able to find these common tones that worked over adjacent chords. However, each one of them was a fifth, right? So we have a fifth on beat 1, a fifth that's held over, that note A is held over into beat 2. Then the F sharp is the fifth of that B minor chord held over. And then the D is the fifth of that G chord. So again, we're going to have these fifths happening on the strong positions. A fifth on beat 1, fifth on beat 3, fifth on beat 1 of the next measure. And again, it's probably not going to work so well when it's only these 2 voices. But once we fill in thirds, it's going to be nicer. So I said once we fill in thirds, it's going to be nicer. I'm going to do that with my voice, and I want you to try to do that too. So D, A, where's the third? It's F sharp. And then over the B minor, it's going to be D. And then over the G chord, it's going to be B. So I'm going to sing that. I'm going to sing. I'm just going to play them as quarter notes. I'm not going to worry about how I'm going to fill in the gaps. I could probably connect them by step, and maybe I will, but I'm just going to sing those notes. I'm going to sing the F sharp and the D and the B while we listen to this, and see if filling in the chord helps me like it, helps overcome that. F sharp, B, D, C sharp, B. How do you like that? That was not too bad there. Now, if I go through the math on it, I might find that it created some other parallel somethings in there, but I actually think not. So that would be a possibility. It would still be the case that there are those prominent fifths, but just having that other voice in there would fix it. So when I go to assemble the canon, that's one of the things I'm going to look for. Are there people's melodies that basically have a D on the first beat and then a B no, sorry, an F sharp on that first beat, and then a B on the second, D on the third beat. I got to say this right. F sharp on the first beat, a D on the third beat, and then a B on the next beat. And the answer is yes. These quarter note melodies, a lot of people's quarter note melodies basically were D, C, it was F sharp, E, D, C sharp, B, because that's Pachelbel's original melody. And so several people referenced that. So just putting Pachelbel's original melody in conjunction with this is going to help fill out that chord, right? So, yeah, I really enjoyed going over that example. I am going to go over a couple others, though, because I can, and it's fun, and I got the time because, you know, that's what we do here. So I'm going to flip back to these things. And so Linda had a couple different versions. And she had actually assembled one into a canon. Instead of checking that out, I'm just going to check out the raw version here. And the raw version has just the melody here. So we're going to hear the quarter note melody now. And we've done the singing exercise. So now we're just going to listen. Here comes the quarter note melody. I like it. It's nice, simple, mostly stepwise melody that, you know, it sounds like a melody. It's, if we think about the original Pachelbel melody, because he stayed in one direction, it covered more range, right? Covered more range. The range of this melody is only a fourth. The lowest note is the A, the highest note is the D. And so it's a relatively range restricted melody. So to me, it makes a great inner melody, right? So this one is going to be, again, like not one I would probably start the piece with, but not because it's got issues with fifths, like parallel fifths or anything like that, or open fifths. It's just because the range of the melody is a little more restricted. And so I'm going to do, again, my quick mental check for parallels and things. I'm just looking, there's a fifth on the first beat and no other fifths nearby, fifth on the fourth beat, no other fifths nearby, an octave on the second beat of the next measure, no other octaves nearby, and that's it. All right, so that's my quick and dirty check for parallels that it passed. There's a plugin, by the way, in MuseScore that can check for parallels for you. All right, now let's hear the eighth note version. Ah, I love that leap. Do-da, do-dum, that leap, B to G, C sharp, D. That was really nice because so it's been more restricted in range, and that leap there really kind of opened it up for me. And there's also like a climactic element to it, right? If you think about it, that G is the highest note we've heard in this melody so far. She gives us the F sharp at the beginning of that passage, and then it starts coming down, and then it reaches that G kind of at this climactic point, like 2/3, 3/4 of the way through. Is that the comment that Bob or Stephen was making earlier? Because I saw math in there. 2.66 thirds, Bob. Complete equity would be 2.66 thirds. Yeah, I think you're calculating the number of thirds, doing some math on that. That would mean how many thirds there were compared to how many roots and how many fifths. So I'm liking that. And again, I could go through the math on the parallels and whether or not there's any issues there. I'm not seeing anything too problematic offhand or anything. So yeah, I like that one a lot too. Now let's hear the 16th note one. Cool. So one of the things that Linda has going on here is she's also doing a nice job of kind of developing motifs, right? This do, dum, D, B, D, B. I can't sing that. D, C sharp, B, C sharp, A. What D? Am I singing a right D? Is that a D? I gotta, like, I'm questioning myself now. Is that a D? Let me give myself a D. D. D, C sharp, B. Yep. So that line, D, 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 that kind of like staggered thirds kind of motif that she's got going there. There's been other references to that, right? Because also there was in Lois's version also, it was B, G, A, F sharp, right? That staggered third motif is like a nice little melody. It's nice. That's a nice little melodic device. And so it's a common one for a good reason. And so it's a nice little pattern to hit upon when you can make use of it. So that eighth note melody used that pattern. Here she's got this do da da dum, and then ba do da dum, which is basically the same motif flipped around. Then ba da da dum, which is the same motif again up a step. Then ba do da dum, which is like the same motif backwards, right? And when I say same motif, right, it's step, step in the same direction, then leap down a third, right? D, E, F sharp, step. It's like ascending steps and then leap back down, and then A, G, F sharp, it's descending steps and then leap back, and then B, A, G, B is again descending steps and leap back, then A, F sharp, G, A. So now again, it's steps and leaps, but this time it starts with the leap and then steps back, so it's kind of backwards. Now what's going on? And then again, B, G, A, B, which we just heard, and then breaks up the pattern with C sharp, A, C sharp, E. And it's good that she didn't keep that same pattern going, because that would have been too much of a good thing, I think. The question is it already too much of a good thing? I don't know. Everyone gets to decide that for themselves, what's too much of a good thing. One thing I will observe about it that's working against it, as far as that goes, the pattern that's being repeated has a repeated note in it itself, right? Each one of those patterns starts and ends with the last note. And once you hear that, you kind of can't unhear it. I'm going to play that again and see if you agree. That repeated note within the pattern causes each one of those patterns to have a repeated note. And at some point, I'll tell you a little story about that in a second, but let's just listen to it. So I'm not going to claim that I really, really was bothered by it, but here's the story I'm going to tell you. It's not even a story. It's a hypothetical situation. Imagine I'm standing next to you and I poke you in the side and say, "Hey," you'd go up and you wouldn't think twice of it. What if I poked you again? You'd say, "What?" What if I poked you a third time? You'd go, "Stop doing that." What if I poked you 173 times? If that happens, you'd get a bruise. You would totally get a bruise in that spot. And then, long before I hit that 173rd time, you'd be slapping me. You'd be saying, "Stop doing that." And you'd get away from me. But if I held you down and poked you in the side 173 times, and you couldn't escape it, you would develop a bruise there. And then, if I let you go and then someone else came up to you and started to put their finger anywhere near your side, you'd go, "Oh, no, don't do that." And you'd like clutch your side to protect yourself. And you'd totally be oversensitized to that, to the point where you don't want someone touching you there because you got a bruise there. I use this as a technique for deciding if something bothers me. Because if I listen to it once or twice, I'm not going to know. But if I listen to it 100 times or 12 times, however many times it takes, but listen to it a bunch of times, if something's bothering you, then you'll really know it. When you listen to it over and over again, it'll stick out. And so I do listen to my own compositions over and over and over, in part because, well, I enjoy them. I mean, I wrote them because I like them, right? But also, if something starts to stick out at me as being out of place, I can fix that. And so John's asking about the plugin for the parallels. Let me see if I can find it for you. There's ones that work with MuseScore 3 that I think some, but not all of them, have been updated for MuseScore 4. So let me get the link so I can put it in here. So it's showing me 3x plugins. Let me go to 4x. Yeah, let's just say any. And now apply. So the ones that I'm thinking of are called, let's see, Harmony. So one of them, nope, that's not it, not it. Check Harmony, nope, Check Harmony Rules. This one here, that's called Check Harmony Rules. So let me paste that link into the chat. So there's one. The other one is just called Parallel, I think. It's got the word parallel. Check for parallel fifths and octaves. So there's another one. And they do a quite good job in the right context. Like, I don't think they'll like check like an orchestral score and look for all combinations or anything. They're basically designed to work well in that kind of specific context of simple, two-stave kind of choral music. I guess it would probably work with four staves. I haven't even really tried it, but it checks with two staves for sure, including multiple voices. Okay, so let me return to where I was. So I was talking about the poking in the side a bunch of times, and then, if you hear it a bunch of times, you'll eventually decide what you don't like about something. And I also talk about this sometimes for improvisation, because now it's not even, I'll record my improvisation and then listen to it over and over again. And now I'm not listening for one thing. I'm not looking for like, did that one note work or not? Because you're improvising. You can't be in control of every note. But what you can be in control of is there kind of a thing that you do too much? Like if you find yourself improvising that same boo-da-da-dum lick over and over again, you'll start hearing that lick everywhere. And then you go, oh my God, please stop doing that lick. And then you'll eventually catch yourself when you're improvising and about to play that same lick. And then you'll catch yourself and not do it. So that's the theory anyhow. And so that's one reason I recommend, as a way of improving your improvisation, is to record an improvisation and listen to it over and over and over again to discover what you don't like about your own improvisation. And then don't do that thing anymore. So anyhow, there's that. Let's hear this final, the rhythmically varied version, and then check out one more. Let me share my screen again. My internet got lost. You know, I'm going off my phone today, as I mentioned earlier, and it held up pretty well, but then it stopped. So I'll probably try to wrap up pretty quick here, because who knows how much success I'm going to have. Let's I'm going to ask someone to confirm. Okay. Okay. So I think I'm back. Let me know. Okay, good job. Allison, is there going to be any, what have you finished for this week? Allison, I'm not sure what you're asking here. It looks like a typo or something went goofy. Is there going to be any something? But no, there's not new lessons or anything. Yeah, the replay will hopefully be okay. It'll just show a blank screen for a little bit, but it should be all right. We'll find out, I guess. Let me pop out my chat so I can continue to follow it. There we have it. There we go. Okay, so anyhow, I was talking about this last melody as being more angular, and because it's got more leaps in it. I wasn't expecting it to leap down. Might have made more sense to me. And so this idea, so part of it is that there was a leap into a beat that I said, well, that's a little, not like super like desirable unless you have a reason for it. But I will say that contrary motion is a better answer, because if it was ba-da-da-da-dum, that A would be leaping up into the D and would be kind of finishing the thought that we started at the beginning of the beat. Ba-da-da-bum, right? That C sharp here on the and of 2 really wanted to resolve back up to the D on 3. So by taking it all the way down to that low D, you've kind of what we call frustrated the leading tone. That's the term that is used in textbooks sometimes. We have a leading tone, C sharp, on the and of 2 that we kind of wanted to see resolve up to D, and it resolved to D, but in the wrong octave. So yeah, that can happen sometimes if there's a good reason for it, but I'm not convinced there was a good reason. I think that same melody would have been just lovely with the D up an octave. I would even keep the F sharp down low. Ba-da-da-da-da-da-dum, ba-da-da-da-dum. That would have been a fine melody as well. That repeated F sharp, repeated notes are another funny thing, and I'm actually kind of surprised this hasn't come up yet. But repeated notes in slow-moving passages are really great. Repeated notes in faster-moving passages are a little awkward. And this is partially me speaking with a pianist bias, but also a wind instrument player bias. On piano, it's hard to play the same note over and over again fast. Right? I can't play 30-second notes over and over again on the same pitch other than switching fingers on it, which is a thing. Totally. You turn your hand a little sideways and then go da-da-da-da. You can play kind of repeated note as fast as you can trill, basically. But it's like a special thing. It's like it breaks up a line a little bit. If you've got a moving line and then you repeat a note within it, it does kind of break it up a little bit. Breaks up the sound of it and the feel of playing it on the piano. On a wind instrument, you might be slurring these notes. And also on violin or on stringed instruments, the same is true. You might be doing it all on one bow, and just depending on, changing your your fingerboard position with your other hand to give you the different pitches. But as soon as you have to play 2 notes of the same pitch in a row, it means a bow direction change or a tongue on a wind instrument. And I'm not, we do those things, but it is a little weird when it happens in the middle of a line. So that is something to be thinking about, is how you're using repeated notes. So this repeated note from the F sharp to the F sharp is borderline to me. Let's listen to it, see if what we hear about it. When I sang it, it was a little weird, but I didn't really notice it listening to it. But now I'm going to listen for it. The F sharp between the and of 3 and 4. So I like it a lot. Boo, doo, da, doo, da, da, da. I actually like that a lot. So it falls on the right side of that border. When I said it's borderline for me, I think it falls on the right side of the border. But that's largely because it was an 8th note and not a 16th note. Had it been a 16th note, then I think it would have bothered me a little more. On the other hand, you could totally tie it to fix it. Hook bow. Oh, that's a violin technique of a way of I don't even know what that means, but I'm totally envisioning something. So it's a way of bowing without changing bow position, being able to play a bow note, so you can be still doing one long up bow or one long bow down bow, and just sort of do something with your hand to on a wind instrument, we'd call it a breath accent. Where you just put an extra amount of breath to sort of delineate that note. But anyhow, what I would say is ties, like tying that F sharp into the next measure, is another way of giving you the effect of that F sharp being the common tone between the chord, but not having to re-articulate it. Now, if rhythmically speaking, the re-articulation would have been important, that would be one thing. But check this out. That line started with the 16th rest, followed by 3 16th notes. And I think I can load Linda's version into MuseScore. I'm going to do it because actually I would love to do this. So Linda's version, I'm going to load into MuseScore, and then I'll probably wrap up from that. So Linda's version here, what I was pointing out is that beat 1 has a 16th rest at the beginning of it. And if beat 4 had that F sharp tied in or replaced with a rest, that would kind of give me that. So I'll firstly play it as is, and I'll play just the melody. This time I'm going to repeat, I'm going to delete that F sharp. So I like it with that rest in there because it sort of echoed what happened on the first beat, right? On the other hand, the next beat is going to have that rest in there also. So maybe I like it, maybe I don't. But here's the other thing. What if I held... Yeah, I don't know. I'm just playing around, but I'm giving you some ideas here. What if I held that A into the next beat and then tied it over? Now that A is a non-chord tone against the G, but it resolves up to the B. And then the question is, what do I think about that? I kind of want to hear this now. So we're gonna. Yeah, and I would say, Dave, this is not a piece where the romantic sound of the MuseSounds Violin 1 is doing us a favor. So I actually changed in my version to Violin 2 so that I get a less romantic sound, a more Baroque sound. And I think that will generally make you happier. And me as well for this piece. Yeah, I like that one better. So anyhow, yeah, so I mean, it does sound like how a romantic era violin player would go, and that's why that guy that you posted the video of went on and on and on about how wonderful the solo violin sound was, because it is wonderful in the right context. This just isn't it. So, so this leap coming out of the D in the second measure, and then do-da-da-da-bum is one of those cases of a leap into a beat that I said you want to be a little careful about. But I like how it's handled here because we're leaping from a chord tone. That D is a chord tone, and then we're leaping into a chord tone, and there's a change of direction there. And the F sharp that starts beat 2 kind of sets up the F sharp on beat 3. So when I play that, it kind of makes sense. That F sharp to the G I hear, and these other fast moving notes are like a separate thing going on. So that's a whole other aspect of things we could get into some other time, is the idea that sometimes melodies are what we call compound melodies, where what happens at the beginning of the beat connects to the beginning of the next beat, but then what happens in the middle of the beat connects to what happens in the middle of the next beat. And so we're not so much caring about the leap from the beginning of the beat to the middle of the beat. It's more like you're doing two different things, like I did at the beginning of this session where I sang the bass and the melody. It's not about me leaping between them. It's about me doing two different things and happening to leap between them. So anyhow, that's the show. So hope you all find this useful, and I look forward to getting a few more submissions before tomorrow so I can start putting together a canon, and we'll talk a little more about that process next week, and I'll show you what I have so far, and by the end of end of next week or the week after, I'll have the finished canon to be able to show off. So get your stuff in by tomorrow, and whoops, let's do that again with all staves. Thanks, everyone, again, for being here. Thanks for the submissions so far, and keep them coming. And let me tell you, just as a quick heads up, so next week we'll be talking a little more about assembling this, and then I'll have a final thing to show off at the end. And I also have a special session for us next month, a totally new, unrelated project that I think a lot of you are going to find an interesting change of pace. And then August, I'm looking at very likely doing a special session just on Braille music, because MuseScore 4.1 is going to have some cool new Braille features, and so that'll probably be our August. And then in the fall, we'll look at doing the harmony course. So that's what we have to look forward to coming up, and I look forward to seeing you all next time. See ya. Bye.